evening. Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to share with you what we found out about the critically endangered Sulawesi forest turtle. I studied the ecology of this species as part of my Masters of Research at Macquarie University just last year. I'll also share with you about my time in Sulawesi to hopefully give those that are interested an insight into what it was like conducting research in Sulawesi. So I wanted to start out with a bit of background about myself for those that don't know me. Taking it way back, I started out like most teenage girls. I was completely obsessed with reptiles. I had very tolerant parents that allowed me to keep a variety of herps at home, weaseled my way into working in a few reptile stores, and fortunately for me, this passion never faded. I went on to study my undergrad and then on to honours in post-bio reptile recovery, and during that time I became very much stuck in a hole of being a fieldwork junkie. I absolutely loved being able to get out and see the variety of herps the world has to offer, and this addiction took me all over the place, which I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunities to have done so. From university, my second passion came with science, so I had no doubt in my head that I wanted to be anything other than a researcher, more specifically a herpetologist. When I was presented with the opportunity to go and study a freshwater turtle in Sulawesi, I actually wasn't that into turtles at the time. However, I did give them a chance. I gave them a quick Google, and what I found was I got very fascinated with this turtle. It was a very cool looking turtle, and that's how it became a master's project. And this turtle fascination definitely hasn't died. I can definitely call myself a turtle person now, and I'm on to studying the Murray-Darling Basin turtles in Australia as part of my PhD that I've just started this year. Now back onto Sulawesi. Some of you might be thinking, where on earth is Sulawesi? Well, it's an island within Indonesia. For many of you that know where Borneo is, Sulawesi is that funky-shaped island to its right. It is part of a bioregion known as Wallacea. This means that these islands have been isolated from large land masses for a long period of time, and flora and fauna had to cross deep oceanic barriers to reach the island if they were not there previously. As a result, this has led to high levels of endemism and is a biodiversity hotspot, in particular for herpetofauna. So it was safe to say I was pretty excited to go over and visit. Now, before I could head over, I had to get a research permit for Indonesia, and those of you that are familiar with this process would know how much of an adventure it is in itself. I found this chart on Google that sort of best describes how you go about getting a research permit for Indonesia, and it was actually titled, "Why Make It Easy When You Can Make It Hard?" On top of a research permit, you need a long-term stay visa, but I think you get the idea. There's lots of steps involved. I've been told Indonesia is one of the more stricter places for an international researcher. However, this is in place to protect local researchers' work. It's definitely something you don't want to be slack on if you're ever considering going over and conducting research in Indonesia. So I've got my research permit, I'm ready to go. However, did I forget to mention that Sulawesi is uncomfortably close to what is known as the Ring of Fire? Earthquakes are definitely a regular occurrence even when I was there. The night before I was set to head off and get a head start on this project, the 2018 earthquake and tsunami hit the city I was meant to fly into. For me, this is the first time I've had to consider natural disasters, and this really threw a spanner in the works. However, I felt very fortunate our team members were all safe and well. Second time's the charm. So we finally get to Sulawesi and we're very warmly greeted with open arms and plenty of paparazzi. I can confidently say my supervisors Martin and Simon were very much at home with the extra attention and referred to as, I quote, Baywatch stars by our Indonesian counterpart Fadli. If you're ever going to visit this part of the world, I hope you're comfortable in front of a camera. In saying that, everyone was very kind, welcoming and easygoing, and that suited me quite well. One of the things I miss the most about Sulawesi is the Indonesian food. It was very good and they catered quite well to vegan and vegetarian dietary requirements. They also well and truly live off the land, and most of the food I ate was either locally sourced or picked straight from the backyard and even the field. I'll also miss the constant supply of fruit we had during field work, so when we were able to stumble across a rambutan tree or what they called snake fruits, lots of coconuts. I can't say I had that during any other field work. I was also lucky enough to be invited to attend not one, but 3 weddings whilst I was there. Again, very warmly welcomed at these events, and it was an awesome culture experience. here I am standing in a photo next to the newly wedded couple, and I've pointed myself out just in case you didn't know which one I was. Fieldwork itself was an amazing experience, although it was incredibly hot. I don't think I've ever sweated so much in my life. But these field sites were within plantations, so we had minimal parasite issues. I saw 2 leeches the entire time I was there. I didn't really notice mosquitoes majority of the time, which is quite unusual for the tropics, so I really wasn't complaining all that much about fieldwork. And then even though we were in plantations, I still got to see lots of herps, which is very cool. I can't say I saw any of the herps I showed on that previous slide, but I did see a lot that I was in awe of. So here we have vine snakes, I saw a few of, keelbacks, and my favourite is this black pipe snake. So this is a fossorial snake species, kind of similar to our bandy. Yeah, I really liked the snake. This is a baby that I managed to photograph. We also saw an adult, which was quite a bit bigger. Plenty of lizards in Sulawesi, so we've got Eutropus skink species. Saw plenty of those. A few bento geckos, baby green-eyed geckos. There was a tree that was full of these guys, and a few adults that I couldn't catch or manage to get a photo of. And then another favourite is this Sulawesi water skink. So this is an endemic skink to Sulawesi as well. We saw a baby, and then the adults get about the same size as our large water skinks as well. And lots of frogs and toads in Sulawesi. So we've got crab-eating frogs, lots of rice paddy frogs. I only saw one common Asian toad over there. However, we saw plenty of these Sulawesi toads, which again is another endemic to Sulawesi. And I saw plenty of my study species. So Sulawesi has 2 endemic turtle species, one being the forest turtle and then the other one being the Forston's tortoise. The Sulawesi forest turtle is in the top 25 most endangered turtles in the world. They are listed as critically endangered. They're also a monotypic species, so that means that they are the only species within their genus Leucocephalon. Despite their listing, their wild ecology is largely unknown. But what we do know about them is obviously their appearance. So males do get quite a bit bigger than females and also have these larger looking yellowy white heads compared to the females. Females lay 1 to 2 eggs per clutch, and they might lay multiple clutches throughout the year. We know this thanks to captive breeding efforts that haven't been so successful in the past, but I have heard it's getting better. Hatchlings are also quite large, so up the top there you can see me holding a hatchling. Obviously this is quite a bit different to our turtles over here, so yeah, the hatchlings are quite big as well. So currently there's an Asian turtle crisis, for those of you that don't know. So freshwater turtles have persisted for such a long period of time, that's over 200 million years. However, their slow growth and delayed maturity make them particularly susceptible to human pressures. Turtles are considered to be one of the most threatened vertebrate groups in the world, that is only second to primates, and more than 60% of freshwater turtles are listed as threatened with extinction, with the highest proportion heavily skewed towards Asia due to heavy harvest and habitat destruction, and unfortunately the forest turtle falls into this category. So the 2 major threats for the forest turtle are thought to be habitat loss and deforestation. So socioeconomic issues in the 1990s in Indonesia led to an increase in immigration to Sulawesi. With more people coming onto the island, they needed more land for farmland and crops, so this increased logging. I found a study that measured between 2000 to 2010, 1.1% of Sulawesi's forest was lost per year, and this is thought to be a decrease compared to previous years. In 2010, it was measured that 80% of the island was plantations and regrowth. And the second threat is thought to be overexploitation. So this species was actually only described in 1995. A year after being described, it was already being observed in markets in China. As the government began to notice that there is a decrease in the populations of these turtles, they put a zero export quota ban in place in 2002. However, unfortunately, this sort of ban doesn't stop people from collecting and trading the turtles within Indonesia itself. So the aims of my study is to understand the ecology of the Sulawesi forest turtle. So to be able to conserve a species, we actually need to understand the species as well. So that's what my project is looking at helping to do. So first up, I'll determine home range size and overlap, quantify habitat use and selection, test for sex-based differences in home range and space use, and test for sexual dimorphism in head width and carapace length. So here's my field site. So you've got nice clear flowing streams that we could find the turtles in. The streams varied from ankle deep to also larger pools. It was quite nice to be in, especially during the hot days. We chose this site because it has a known good sized population thanks to previous surveys that have been done. The surrounding area is plantations, so you've got lots of coconuts, cacao trees, and lots of various fruits embedded in there too. So based on local knowledge and people that used to go out finding these turtles, we know that it's much easier to see these turtles at night. We don't really know at this stage what they were doing during the day. However, at night, it was quite easy to walk through the streams with a head torch and spotlight for them. They'd literally just be sitting there in sort of a shallow part of the river, not doing a whole lot. All the turtles we encountered, we measured, weighed, and ID notched. So there's my assistant, Fatma. She's ID notching one of the turtles we found during the day. So I did a radio telemetry study using VHF transmitters. So that what that means is I had to go and radio track the turtles, and then once I found the turtle, I'd get a GPS location of the turtle. So I did place transmitters on 20 adult turtles, an even number of males and females, and it took about 2 weeks to catch and place transmitters on all turtles, which was great. We tracked the turtles 1 to 3 times per week in the first field season, and then 3 to 5 times per week in the second field season. There was a mixture of day and night tracking to see what the turtles were doing throughout the whole 24 hours. Unfortunately, when I came back for the second field season, I couldn't find 6 of my turtles. Now, I'll touch on this a little bit later. However, I was pretty lucky that it was still 7 males and 7 females, so I was able to do quite easy analysis with that. So here's a photo of a transmitter placed on a turtle just to show the positioning. We used this epoxy putty to place the transmitter on the turtle. It stayed on sort of like concrete, but it was easy to also pluck off at the end of surveys. The positioning is at the back and to the side, as far as we can on the marginal scutes. This sort of positioning is favourable so it doesn't come off when it gets snagged on vegetation or debris, sort of minimises that, and also it minimises the chances of it hindering any sort of breeding activity. So for my first question, I wanted to work out what home range is. So home range is defined as the area that provides an animal with its food, shelter, and breeding requirements. So obviously, for conservation efforts, it's quite important to know what home range is for a species. Now, there's actually quite a few methods you can use to determine an animal's home range. I chose 2 different methods to use as to sort of complement each other. And this is a method that was recommended to be used for reptiles. So the first one I used was to determine what I called overall home range. So this was using a minimum convex polygon, and all it did was simply encompass all the tracking points I had for that turtle. And this was paired with what I called core home range, so using a kernel density method. And all that means is this grey shaded area is where the turtle spent 50% or more of its time. So overall home range I can sort of analyse for exploratory behaviour as well, whereas core home range is probably the more important areas that the turtle needs to survive. So when I found my turtle during radio tracking, I also did a habitat assessment. So at each turtle's refuge point, I would take a 1 metre, I'll place a 1 metre square plot around the turtle and estimate different covers. And I also paired this with the random plot. So by doing this, I'm seeing, are turtles selecting for certain habitats within their area, or are they just sort of randomly plonking themselves somewhere and not really caring all that much where they sort of refuge? So I also took a photo above all the plots, and then I later analysed it in the lab when it was a bit easier to do so. So this is what the plots look like. So we've got a turtle refuge plot compared to a random plot. The random plot, I'll also note, was only within 10 metres of where the turtle was, and it would be in a random sort of direction from where the turtle was as well. So here are my results. So what we found for overall home range, we can see that the males, they seem to have a greater span of overall home range, so they tend to, this might indicate that they have slightly more exploratory behaviour than the females. However, the average is about the same, it's a little bit higher. And then core home range is pretty much the same for males and females. Now, applying stats to this, unfortunately I didn't find any difference between males or females. So overall home range for all the animals that I studied is about 5,500 metres squared, and then core home range is about 900 metres squared. And here is my overall home range plotted out on along the stream. So we've got male number 2, we've got female number 1. You get the idea. So what we found here is these turtles show quite strong site fidelity. They pretty much stayed in the same area throughout the duration whilst I was radio tracking. We could also see home range overlap. So these black outlines is the overlap. So male number 4 shares a bit of home range with female number 3. This sort of gives preliminary findings for are males sort of maintaining territories, are they happy to share with other males? And what I found was that female pairs and mixed pairs obviously had a much higher shared average percentage compared to male pairs. It's quite low. But keep in mind, this doesn't account for turtles that I wasn't radio tracking, so there might actually be more male turtles sitting sharing home ranges than I realised. But yeah, it's sort of a good pilot findings. So as I mentioned before, we weren't sure what these turtles were doing during the daytime. And what I found was not a whole lot. So obviously activity is quite low during the day, and then most of them were in refuge during the day. Compared to night, we had a lot more activity. Habitat selection. So what I found was turtles were definitely selecting for habitat. They chose areas with greater canopy cover, broadleaf plants, and also depth of ground cover mattered to these turtles when they were selecting for refuges. So this sort of says to me that they like habitat structure. So they like to hide under things during the day or when they are seeking refuge. So here are a couple of examples of where the turtles were hiding in. Yes, obviously they like quite dense habitat structure. Sexual dimorphism. So every turtle I caught, I also measured, and I'd also measured their head width. Now, male turtles, obviously they are larger than females, but we need to see if this is statistically different. And also their heads look a little bit wider than the female head, so we wanted to test, is there a difference there? So we've got, yes, males do have a greater carapace length compared to females. This is a sexually dimorphic trait. And now with the head width, because this is, because males are obviously larger, are their heads only going to be bigger because they're a larger turtle in general, or are their heads larger despite the turtles being larger themselves? I hope that makes sense. So what I found was male head widths were larger than female head widths, despite the shells being larger. So the head width for male turtles is a sexually dimorphic trait. So in conclusion, our findings are the first to cover the ecology, spatial ecology of the Sulawesi forest turtle. It was great to see that in this human-modified system, they appeared to provide microhabitat for that turtle selected for. Findings will hopefully assist with management strategies to protect the long-term survival of the Sulawesi forest turtle. So conservation recommendations I got out of this project was knowledge on habitat to protect. It would be cool to see further studies monitor impacts of different farming practices. So obviously where I was, it was quite a heterogeneous landscape. So there was various sort of fruit plantations throughout my field site. And there was lots of vegetation obviously along the banks and throughout the villages as well. So it would be cool to see if different farming practices, like maybe areas that have more monocultures, palm oil plantations, if this actually has an impact on the turtles as well. I also started on population monitoring over with my study population, so it would be good to have continued monitoring for this population, other ones too. Another one is education. So for these sorts of conservation projects, education is key. So unfortunately, we're quite privileged to have really good education in our country, and we understand, or most of us understand, that we do need to conserve our wildlife. So Warimin, who was my local guide, he actually was an ex-turtle poacher, so he used to collect the turtles and sell them to an exporter. However, what he didn't realise was these turtles are, one, declining, and secondly, he didn't realise that these turtles were endemic to Sulawesi. So when he found that out, he became quite protective of the turtles and also just wanted to do his best to help with their conservation because to him they were his turtles. So it was great that we were able to provide him with paid opportunities to do so. But it would be cool to sort of get the word out there as well, that these turtles exist and that they're worth conserving. This also leads to stricter laws on harvesting the turtles as well, some more on-ground conservation too. And for head starting programs, ensuring community practices are taken into consideration before releasing turtles. So what I mean by here is going back to my 6 radiotelemetry turtles that disappeared. So what I suspect is that they were taken during clove harvesting season. This started about a month before I arrived for my second lot of surveys. And throughout my field site there are these great big clove trees. So I'm standing in this photo, I'm standing in the stream surveying my turtles, and you can see these clove trees are quite close. Now, the village around my stream site, most of their religious background is Muslim. So in Muslim culture, they tend to just leave wildlife alone, and they definitely weren't interested in my turtles. However, with clove season, lots of people come around from all sorts of villages to collect cloves, and their sort of religious background might be different, and they would be more than okay to collect a turtle if they were to see them. I reckon they were taken during clove harvesting season, as I doubt 6 transmitters conked out, and also we did go out to try and find the turtles, just in case the transmitters failed or fell off or anything, as they do show strong quiet site fidelity, and I knew a few of their favourite spots as well. Oh, and I'm just pointing out, so this guy collecting cloves is on this gigantic bamboo ladder. It's definitely not for the light-hearted. It's a very cool thing to watch. So further investigation into hunting practices based on religion religion could be key in turtle survival as well. So fortunately, this project doesn't end with my master's project, so further efforts are being made by UNTAD, our local counterpart university. They'll continue to study the Sulawesi forest turtle as part of their master's program. Also, Turtle Survival Alliance will continue their breeding program for a potential head starting program in the future, and they're doing quite well as well. So obviously this project could not have been done without a huge team of support. I definitely did not do this on my own. So Turtle Survival Alliance provided quite a bit of funding for this project, majority of the funding for this project, and also they provided expertise as well. Obviously they worked with these turtles for quite a long period of time, and were able to provide quite a bit of advice for us, which was great. I had an awesome team of supervisors, Martin Whiting, Simon Clulo, and Sean Doody. It was great to have their expertise on board and supporting me throughout this whole project. They were a lot of fun to work with. Also, our counterpart university, Fadley and Dewsbury, this project could not have been done without them. They helped us with field logistics, just working over in Sulawesi in general, and also gave me a home as well with their family when I needed a place to stay in the city. They were awesome to work with. Also my field team, Fatma, who is a graduate from UNTAD University. She is now studying her master's. Every single day she had a smile on her face, made me tea. She was a very positive shine of light every single day. Also my local guide, we could not have navigated the sites without him. He was brilliant in the field, but he really had the skill set that nobody could have had without spending a lot of time out there. And also Mickey, who is at IPB University. She is an awesome herpetologist and helped us get started on this project. She was really great to work with too. So thank you. I've provided my socials up on this slide. If you wanted to get in contact with me about anything, just give me a buzz, either email, Instagram or Twitter. Thank you for listening.